So let's get started with our first tipping point of the night. Donald Trump Jr. released emails that show he agreed to meet with a Kremlin-backed attorney who he believed had damaging information about Hillary Clinton. President Trump said in a statement, quote, "My son is a high-quality person and I applaud his transparency. But some Democrats are saying that it might be treasonous." Joining me now, Democratic strategist Kevin Walling. Kevin, thanks so much for joining.
Great to be with you, Bree.
All right, so I wanted to draw your attention to something that Senator Tim Kaine said yesterday. Let's watch.
You think this is treason?
The investigation, it's not, nothing is proven yet, but we're now beyond obstruction of justice in terms of what's being investigated. This is moving into perjury, false statements, and even into potentially treason.
So, Kevin, what's your reaction to that? Do you think that this could potentially be treason?
Absolutely. I think this is a dangerous situation that the White House is moving into. I know, kids that believe strongly in their parents' candidacy when they're running for anything will do a lot of things for their parents, but taking a meeting with a Russian agent to discuss classified information that was passed on to them by the Russian government is a very serious thing. And I think you've seen Republicans and Democrats united on the Hill in a desire to bring Donald Trump Jr. Before the Intelligence Committees to get to the bottom of this. But again, as Tim Kaine said, I wish he had been our Vice President. Now Senator Tim Kaine said, this goes beyond obstruction of justice. This is perjury. This is lying to both the American people, as he repeatedly denied speaking to Russian agents during the course of the campaign and after the election, and is on the road to treason. Again, we need to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be clear, it doesn't really seem like anything illegal happened, or we don't know that anything illegal happened yet. I mean, it's not illegal for a foreigner to work on an American campaign. It's not illegal for Donald Trump Jr. to have met with the attorney. So, I mean, what's the big deal? Why should people care?
And Bree, I think that's a really good point. You see Americans all the time working, American political consultants working overseas on political campaigns up and down the ballot. But again, I think the dangerous thing here is that when you get an email like that saying that the Russian government, a hostile government to the United States, has information that would hurt one of the presidential candidates, you don't take that meeting. You don't respond saying, "I love it. I can't wait to set up this meeting." You call the FBI because again, that's a really dangerous thing. Again, the Trump family is new to politics. I understand that. But a lot of red flags should have gone off, both in the minds of Donald Trump Jr., but certainly Paul Manafort, the campaign manager at the time, and Jared Kushner all should have known better. And again, it's a very dangerous thing that we're moving in towards.
Yeah, I think it is clear. I mean, all throughout this entire time, the Trump campaign has made it clear that there was no effort on behalf of the Russian government to support President Trump, that they didn't know anything about this. I think that this email makes it pretty clear that they did know about it. Although, as we've talked about, I'm not sure that any of those actions are illegal. What does alarm me about all of this is the changing narrative that we're getting from Donald Trump Jr. He said just a couple of days ago that he was going to meet with this attorney to talk about like an obscure adoption policy, and then now we have this. So what do you think about the changing narrative coming out of the White House?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, Brie. I mean, it's a tangled web that we weave. When the White House has said consistently that there's been no Russian engagement, even to the point of no Russian meetings. And really more serious to me is the role of Jared Kushner in all this. Jared had to fill out what is known as an SF-86 form. It's what any person seeking a clearance in this country has to do. Repeatedly in that form, he said he had no meetings with, no calls with, no engagements with foreign agents, specifically Russians. And now we know he's had no less than 3 meetings with Russian agents. This last one disclosed by Donald Trump Jr. being the last one that has come forward. And he's on sensitive calls. He's in the Situation Room. And that's a very dangerous thing. Lying on those forms is an offense punishable by imprisonment. So I think out of good faith from this administration, the first thing that they should do, I understand he's family, but I think the first thing that they need to do is remove Jared Kushner's security clearance. Clearly, he's not up to spec when it comes to being completely truthful about entanglements with Russian agents.
So I wanted to ask you, about something, about a double standard that's become very apparent throughout all this coverage of the Russian scandal, of Ukraine, of the DNC. You know, last year, DNC officials met with Ukrainian officials and were in connections with the Ukrainian embassy, you know, and they were putting together opposition research for them, but no one talked about it. No one raised an eyelash, you know, no one raised an eyebrow about it, an eyelash. No one really seemed to care. So is it only a problem when a Trump does this and not a problem when a Clinton does it?
Sure. I mean, that's a great point, Bree, and I know Politico has covered those conversations that were being had from Democratic Party officials in the Ukrainian government. It backfired, as we know, on Ukraine's government. The main focus of the Ukraine government was to discredit and really call into question the fitness for Donald Trump's candidacy. I think the majority of Americans agree that Donald Trump probably isn't fit to be president, but still a good number of those folks voted for him on Election Day. Again, this is a problem with a sitting president. We'd be having a different conversation, I think, if Secretary Clinton was in office as president. But again, we're talking specifically about Donald Trump Jr. Now we know close family associates, leadership of the Trump campaign knew full well what the Russian government was up to and had multiple meetings that were lied about, as you rightly point out. And this is something that Congress really needs to dig in with on the Intelligence Committee, and something that the special prosecutor in Robert Mueller needs to really zero in as well.
So speaking of Congress, do you think that this revelation warrants impeachment? Congressman Brad Sherman has actually officially filed articles of impeachment just today. Do you think that that's an overreaction?
I think we need to get to the bottom of this first. You know, we need to remember that Watergate was a 2-year process, from the burglary before the election to when President Nixon resigned in August 2 years later. We live in a world, and we both know it well, where people want answers as quickly as possible, and there's something to be said for that, especially if we are going down the road of treason. Then we want to get to this sooner than later, before there's irreparable harm done to this country. But again, I think we need to let the process play out. I think it's a bit premature for Congressman Sherman to introduce those articles. But again, we need to let this process play out. We need the special prosecutor to have the resources, to have the time to get to the bottom of this, for Congress to do its work. And then if it's warranted and we see even more collusion and assistance from a foreign hostile government with the blessing of the Trump campaign, then that's a very serious offense that moves towards impeachment.
Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today.